Let's start off with our eyes image right here. So what you want to do is open up a photo of someone that you want to apply this custom skin texture to. Next, you'll need to open up a texture. And I've chosen this texture right here because it's almost like a paint peeling type of texture. And I thought that would be really cool to have it look like her skin is just sort of peeling off. And that's why I wanted to use this image right here. But we can see we can't really use it exactly the way it is. So we're going to modify this texture to fit perfectly over the face. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and double click on this and load it into Photoshop. Now we must get this texture here over to the project image behind here. So all we have to do is select the Move tool on the toolbar and click on this texture, and I'll just drag it, holding down the mouse, I'll drag it over to the other image and you'll see it highlight. Just like that, and release the mouse, and then you'll see that it's placed on this image, and it'll also make a new layer for it. So you can go ahead and just name this layer now, and I'll call this Face Texture. And then I'll also name this layer, I like to call it Eyes. So if you've brought your texture into the image that you would like to apply the texture to, well, what you want to do first, if you're working with a face that looks just like this, then you need to almost focus on one side because the texture is just not going to blend very well the way it is now. So what I'll do is just move this around, and I can see right here, you notice the texture is a little bit darker on this side. Well, then this would be really good to have, maybe have this on the right side of her face. So you can see because her face here has some shadows going down this side. So what I could do is utilize that, or utilize this side of the texture and use that for this side of her face. We can lower the opacity of this layer, and that will help us see right through. Now I love how this side looks. And so to make this really look more natural, like more organic, let's make the texture look the same on both sides of the face. And, just like you have one ear, you have two ears, but they look both the same on each side of your head. Well, it's kind of like the same. It gives it more of a natural, like the texture really grew and her skin really developed in the exact same way. So what I'm going to do is select this rectangular marquee tool, and I'm only going to select right to the very middle of her nose there, just right between the eyes. And let me try that again. Right between the eyes and down the nose, right in the middle. Directly in the middle there. And then I'll release the mouse. And then now I can go ahead and press the delete key on the keyboard. Then what I'm going to do is come over here to select and deselect. We no longer need that, but we can make this identical. We can just make a mirror image of this texture and place it over on this side of her face. So what I can do is select the texture on this side and then hold down the Alt key. Now here's the trick. Pay attention. Here's the trick. Hold down the Alt key, which is the Option key on the Mac. Hold down the Control key, which is the Command key on the Mac, and then hold down the Shift key all together. And when you do that, you'll make a copy of the contents inside that layer, but without making a new layer. See, we're going to keep all this inside the same layer here. It's conservative and it keeps things a little bit more tidy, and I like to work that way. But now that we've made this copy, while it's still selected, let's come up here to select, down here to transform, and flip this horizontal. And then come over here to the Move tool, hold down Shift, and move this towards the center and meet the other texture on the other side. Look at that. And I'll come up here, I'll just come up here to select and deselect that. And let's zoom really closely so we can see if we've connected those two sides together. And you see how this looks? It just looks a little bit more proportionate, and I really like that. So now we don't have to get into any masking or anything like that yet. Let's focus on the top of her forehead up here and start applying a texture for this area. What we can do is select a portion of the texture down here and then paste it on a new layer and then just position it on her forehead. So what I'll do is just come over to the toolbar and select the rectangular marquee tool, and I'll just make a selection here something like this, and I'll just move this over just a touch. Something that looks like that. You know, you can go over here and just draw a selection, and I'm just going to try to avoid the nose area here because the texture is not so detailed in this area. And so what I'm going to do is come over here to edit, copy, and then go up here to edit, paste, and we've pasted that on its own separate layer. And I'm not going to name that layer now because I will probably end up merging this layer with the one below it here. But let's go ahead and rotate this and see if we can get it to fit on her forehead, and then just blend that in with the other texture. I'll come over here to edit, free transform, and I'll hold down the shift key and I'll rotate this around, and so it's going in the same direction. Now I'll just position this up here just like so. Or better yet, I'll just take this texture all the way up to the top. All right, cool. Now I'll just go ahead and make another copy of this, just like we did below. I'll make a selection around it. I'll hold down Alt, Control, Shift, which is Option, Command, Shift on the Mac, and I will click my mouse, little arrow here on the mouse pointer. I'll click inside the selection, drag it over on this side, and then I'll come over here to Edit, Transform, and Flip Horizontal. And I'll select the Move tool and move this back. I'll hold down the Shift key too so that rides along evenly horizontally. And I'll just connect these two right here, just where they meet. And then I'll go over here to Select and Deselect. And I'll just select the Move tool here just to make sure that this is centered, but that looks pretty good. Okay, so we need to blend this texture and make it flow into the texture below here. And what I can do is turn this opacity up to 100%. And then what I'll do is probably come up here to Edit, Transform, and just stretch this so it's going just a little bit over this other texture here. And I'm going to go ahead and select the Eraser tool with a soft brush. And I'm just doing this pretty quickly here, but you generally get the idea. I'm just going to erase away some of the texture here so it blends in just a little bit better around here. And some of these details you will not see later because this will be blended in with the skin. So this line here, we basically just want to get rid of this line. There we go, something that looks like that, just so it's seamless. And yeah, there you go. And then what I'll do is just merge this layer with the one below it, and I can simply come up here to Layer and come down here to Merge Down. And that'll take that layer and merge it with the one below it. Watch this. There you go. Well, we can go ahead and start some masking. But before we do that, let's go ahead and use the blending mode setting that we will be using to blend this texture in with the face. And just come over to the blending mode menu on this layer and come all the way down to luminacy. And now it's going off the screen here, but it's at the very bottom. You come all the way down to the very bottom, you'll find luminacy at the bottom here. Go ahead and select that, and you should see something that looks like this. Then I'll come over to the opacity of this layer and turn down to something like 24%, somewhere along there. And you can see that just blend in really nicely. Now, we wouldn't leave it like this because we have to go through and touch up some of the texture to make it really look like it's a part of her skin. And this is kind of a fun part because we're going to do some masking and all sorts of stuff. But first of all, I'm going to need to make a layer mask on this layer here. So I'll just come down to the bottom of the layers palette, click on this button, add layer mask, and then I'll come over to the toolbar and select the brush tool with a dark or black brush, and then I'll click OK. I'll right click on the image and create somewhat of a large brush. Depending on how large your image is, you'll need a larger brush. If it's a low resolution image, then you'll just need a smaller brush. Something that looks like this, and then I'll turn that hardness all the way down to 0. And what I'll do is just come over here with this brush and start painting around here like this. And don't worry, I make mistakes, so if I remove too much texture, I can always come back and bring it back a little bit. Either that or turn up the hardness of the brush. So it looks really gradual. So it looks like that texture is really going around her face, just something like this. There you go. And it's kind of fun to do. I'll probably leave her ears out here. I'll just come up here. And of course, we don't want it in the hair, so I'll just go ahead and mask the hair.